color on that is quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
You're live.
Well, hello, and welcome to Thirsty Thursday, 7 p.m. Hey, Josh, what you drinking live on ConnecTV and Twitch and my YouTube channel. Hey, Josh, what you drinking? All right. How's things? Pretty good here. It's been a crazy effing week, and beer is definitely in order. So trying a little different format today. Yes, I'm live, but I'm going to play some pre-taped segments because it's just easier to do it earlier and play them so they don't forget what I was talking about. Because that's the thing that happens sometimes when it's 7 p.m. on a Thursday and you're drinking beer. All right. So anyway, my first clip this evening is not specifically me drinking beer. So, hey, Josh, what you drinking live is going to have a regular info segments. This time I've chosen, well, you'll see. Anyway, alrighty. So without any further yibba yabba jibba jabba, I'm going to turn this over to my producer, and he's going to play the clip. All right. See you in a bit. I'll be here answering questions. Hi there. Welcome to this first segment for this episode of Hey Josh, what you drinking live on Connect TV. Today I thought I would talk a little bit about some of the terms and basically a glossary, I suppose, of some of the things you might hear me say on Hey Josh, what you drinking? Now, I know that most people who enjoy craft beer probably are well aware of most of these terms and what they mean, but I also realize that there are quite a few people who tune into the show who are a little less well versed in what I'm talking about and don't always understand what I'm saying. So I thought I'd go through a little bit of a glossary of some of the terms that you'll hear on Hey Josh, what you drinking, and maybe dispel a little bit of the mystery of what I'm saying if you're not following. So I guess I'll just start kind of alphabetically. So you may hear me say a word adjuncts when I'm talking about beer. So that refers to any unmalted grain, and I'm now reading from basically I can't remember what the source is right now. I really should know that, but I'm reading out to you what these mean, and I'm going to add my own stuff. So adjuncts. Two viewers. So adjuncts are any unmalted grain or any other fermentable ingredients. Honey. It says there's two viewers, one on Connect TV and one on Twitch. Rice, corn mash, things like that, used in the brewing process. Adjuncts are typically either rice or corn, and can also include honey. Okay, here we go. Syrups and numerous other sources of fermentable carbohydrates. They are common in mass-produced light American-style lagers. So a Coors Light, a Molson Canadian, those kind of things are probably they. I wouldn't know for sure, but the malt characteristic is probably brought down to a more palatable level for most people by the addition of lighter flavors like corn or rice. All right. Oh, and another thing you hear me talking about a lot, of course, with beer is yeast. Yeast during the fermentation process, yeast converts the natural malt sugars into alcohol. Everybody knows that, right? And carbon dioxide gas. Yeast was first viewed under a microscope in 1680 by Dutch scientist Antoine van Leeuwenhoek. Leeuwenhoek. Okay, sorry about that. In 1867, of course, Louis Pasteur discovered that yeast cells lack chlorophyll and could develop only in an environment containing both nitrogen and carbon. Science. All right. So that's that's yeast. It turns the sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide, giving us, drunkenness and bubbles in our beer. All right. Another thing you'll hear me say very often when we're referring to beer is obviously there's, I don't know how to see, I say obviously, but not necessarily obviously. There are two basic types of beer: ale and lager. Ales are beers fermented with top fermenting yeast. Ales are typically fermented at warmer temperatures than lagers and are often served warmer. The term ale is also sometimes incorrectly associated with a higher alcohol strength. Lagers are beers that are fermented with bottom fermenting yeast at colder temperatures. Lagers are most often associated with the crisp, clean flavors and are traditionally fermented and served at colder temperatures than ales. So, what is lager? What is lagering? Lagering is the storing bottom fermenting beers, lagers, in a cold beer cellar at it says near freezing temperature, but low temperatures for long periods of time, ranging from only a few weeks to several years, during which time the yeast cells and proteins settle out of the beer to improve flavor and clarity. All right. So what else? Another thing you'll hear me refer to a lot is obviously hops. And I did a small talk about hops last episode. While I was away, I did a pre-recorded bit like this. So hops are, well, they're hoppy. Anyway, one of the things that make hops the bittering and flavorful thing in beer are the alpha acids. Alpha acids are one of the two primary occurring resins in hops. The other is beta acids, alphas and beta acids. Alpha acids are converted during the boiling of the wort, which is the beer before it becomes beer, which causes the majority of the beer's bitterness. So hops are the product, the alpha acids in the hops are what give us our flavor and bitterness. Aromatic hops refer to the hops that, and I think I talked about this very briefly last week. Aromatic hops are the hops that are put into the boil later in the boil, so that the alpha and beta acids don't break down and just give the bitterness. They add the aroma instead. So yeah, it's the acids and the time that the hops are in the boil that make the difference, and that's where a brewer has to be knowledgeable as to whether he wants a bitter beer. Whether they want a bitter beer by adding the hops in early, or if they want an aromatic beer where they put the hops in late, and or a combination of the two. And there's all sorts of other wet hopping and dry hopping. Anyway, I've talked too much about hops. Bitterness units, or IBUs. It's the International Bittering Units. There's a lot. There's science behind that I don't get. But there's a scale of 1 to, I think it's 90. Really should have looked that up before I talked about it. Anyway, I believe I again talked more in depth about that last time. All right. Another thing you'll hear me refer to a lot is body and or mouthfeel of beer. So that is the consistency, thickness, and mouth-filling property of beer. The sensation of palate fullness in the mouth ranges from thin to full-bodied. Also, the textures. It's also the textures one perceives in a beer, including the carbonation, the fullness, and the aftertaste. All right. I think nitrogen, nitro brews are fairly popular right now. One of the most famous nitro brews, obviously, and I keep saying obviously, it's not obvious to everybody, is, well, Guinness. Guinness in the can with the nitro widget in it. So when used for carbonation of a beer, nitrogen contributes a thick, creamy mouthfeel, different from the mouthfeel you'd get from regular carbon dioxide. Well, next would be carbon dioxide, carbonation. Carbonation is everybody knows what carbonation is, right? I'm gonna move on. Putting bubbles in your beer. It can be done. Actually, I'm going to talk about it. It can be done in several ways for beer. With regular beverages that we're used to, like pop, soda, stuff like that. It's usually an injection carbonation where they physically inject carbon dioxide into the liquid under pressure. So that's a pressurizing a vessel captured. I don't think they compare us anyway, right? So that's forced carbonation. There's in the brewing process, as the yeast is doing its job and turning sugars into alcohol and CO2. If the vessel that it's in is well sealed, like a can or a bottle or a giant 80-gallon fermenter, if it's sealed tight and there's nowhere for the carbon dioxide to go, it settles into the liquid. Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna move on from that. I've talked too much about hopping already. Did I think I mentioned dry hopping versus wet hopping. Dry hopping is the addition of hops late in the brewing process to increase the aroma of the finished product without significantly affecting its bitterness. Dry hopping is almost 100% for the aroma of hop in your beer. And wet hopping also very similar to that. Wet hopping refers to using fresh harvested hops right off the vine, the whole flower, adding it at different times of the brew to get the optimum flavors or aromas that the brewer is looking for. Let's see. Okay, you'll often hear me talk about the aroma of beers in regards to the malt profile. And some of the terms that you've probably heard me say are like grainy. So that's like, the smell of grain, cereal, raw grains. You might also hear me say often like toasty or nutty or fruity or toffee or roasty. So those are all just description words of the type of malt that's being used. What else? Oh, Gruit. Gruit is a type of beer it's an old-fashioned herb mix uh, from the time before hops were popular. Um, all sorts of anything that so basically anything that we have now that has herbs and spices instead of or as well as um, in the beer to add bittering or flavor, we call that a gruit now. It technically, I guess, it's not really true anymore because that was a type of beer in the before times when they didn't have access to hops. Uh, I think I've touched on the international bittering units again. Um, here's a much more concise and it's the measure of bittering substances in beer, analytically assessed as milligrams of iser. Yeah, it's science again. Of alpha acids per liter of beer in parts per million. Right? Okay. Too sciencey for me. So let's see. Typically a later lager beers typically have an IBU rating of between 5 to 10. Well, bigger and more bitter IPAs often have an IBU of anywhere from, say, 50 to 70, depending on how crazy the brewer's going. What else? Malt. Okay, I talked about malt and the kind of their characteristics, right? But malt itself, if is processed barley, but also, I guess, wheat malt and other things can be made. Processed barley that has been steeped in water, germinated on malting floors, or in germination boxes or drums, later dried in kilns for the purpose of stopping the germination and converting into insoluble starch. Insoluble, more. See, it's only rocket science if you want it to be. In barley, insoluble starch in barley, uh, converting them into sugar. Another thing they often use in the brewing process instead of straight malt is a malt extract, which is a thick syrup or powder made from malt. It's not very common, especially in craft beer kind of situation, but it's definitely used quite a bit in the bigger one. It's much easier to store. It's much easier to use. It's home brewers use it quite often too. Talk about my, okay, here's a good one, and I'm not sure if I've ever actually mentioned this on my on Hey Josh, what you drinking before, but the Reinheitsgebot. Reinheitsgebot. Now that is the German purity law passed in 1516, stating that beer may only contain water, barley, and hops. Only water, barley, and hops. Yeast was later added after its role in fermentation was discovered by Louis Pasteur. So technically, in Germany, the if it has anything than water, barley, hops, and now yeast, obviously, it's not technically beer. I'm not 100% sure, but seems a little draconian. If no, sorry, your beer is not allowed to have fruit flavors or anything else in it. Otherwise, it's not technically beer. Sour. Sour is, in fact, I think I'll be doing a sour beer as a review after this. Sour. Sour obviously is the taste perceived to be acidic or tart. Uh, Sometimes a result of a bacterial influence. So, but in beer, it's actually the addition of a souring agent, lactobacillus. Same thing that makes yogurt, I believe. Um, so there's two ways to make a sour, and that is a wild sour. They make a big batch of beer and then just let the natural yeasts that float around in the air land in it, ferment it. It'll probably be sour, or what they call a kettle sour, is where they brew a beer and then inject it with the lactobacillus to sour it. Yeah, so that's a bunch of terms that you'll probably hear on "Hey Josh, what you drinking?" Um, if there's anything else that I say and you're not sure what I'm talking about, feel free to drop a comment in either the live broadcast or the or later, and I'll do my best to answer. Anyway, this has been my brewery terms glossary. I hope it was informative. I'm gonna sign off this bit now and go grab a beer to review for Hey Josh, what you drinking? All right, cheers. See you in a little while. I'm not muted there. I'm not muted anymore. Uh, I hope that was somewhat informative. I'm a bit of a rambler. I don't really write out what I'm doing. In this case, I highlighted a bunch of terms that I thought I'd like to talk about on this edition of Hey Josh, what you drinking live? Um, yeah, 20 minutes of me talking about beer terms. Reinheitsgebot. All right, that's a word that I learned. Well, I learned how to pronounce properly. Anywho, so the big portion of this episode is done. What else? Well, it wouldn't be a "Hey Josh, what you drinking?" episode without me drinking beer. So I have my beer review up next. You ready? You ready? Fire it up. Hi. Welcome back to the pre-taped segments of Hey Josh, what you drinking live on Connect TV and later on. Well, I guess it's not later. Also on YouTube, but Hey Josh, what you drinking on YouTube and my personal page? No, it's not on my personal page. Anyway, Hey Josh, what you drinking? With me, Josh. What am I drinking today? Today I have got a Collective Arts Jam Up the Mash. This is a dry hop sour. So I spoke briefly about dry hopping, wet hopping, and sours. So this was most appropriate. So Collective Arts, wonderful brewery from Hamilton, Ontario. I think they also have a location in Toronto. The art on Collective Arts cans, always amazing. This is this one is Barbara Ann Gomez from London, England. Cool, eh? What can I say about this beer before opening it? Dry hop sour, 5.2% alcohol. Collective Arts, Hamilton, Ontario. I'm pretty sure that if you go back into the archives of Hey Josh, what you drinking, you'll see one of these already reviewed. But hey, if something's good, it's good, and you can do it again. What else? If you look at go check out ThatBeerThing.ca. We have a cool little infographic about Collective Arts Brewery and some of our favorites from them. And I hope to get out to Hamilton one day and check out their tap room. All right, let's get into this. Okie dokie. I'm going to pour this one out. Smells hoppy and sour. Nice color. Pretty pale. Not much head to it though, eh? Yeah, it's all but dissipated already. Hazy. Pretty well fermented, but carbonated. Very bubbly. It's got a rather floral uh, aroma to the hops in this one, and also the sourness is quite prominent to it. Very orangey, kind of orange juicy. Anyway, I'm just going to pause for a second and take a picture of this for the socials. You can check out me and or ThatBeerThing.ca on Instagram and TikTok. Anyway, uh, it's very tasty. Um, it's not as aggressively sour as some of the other sours I've had, and it's not as hoppy either. So this reminds me very much, and it's surprisingly light for such a higher alcohol beer, 5.2%. You really don't catch that. I'm guessing it's because the sourness masks the alcoholiness, but it's very good. Anyway, this is reminds me very much of what do they call it? A rattler, where you take a lager type beer and mix it half and half, usually with grapefruit juice or orange juice or some other citrusy juice to give it, well, to bring the alcohol content down and also to give it the fruity flavors. It's very nice. It's not spectacular. It's definitely what I would call uh, a warm weather beer for sure. This will be very nice, except the alcohol content will probably get you a little mucked up if you kept going. This will be a very nice warm weather beer. Nice sunny day out in the patio kind of thing. Perfect. Anyway, I'm going to finish drinking this. I'm going to have nothing more to comment on this. It's quite good. Definitely worth a try. Jam Up the Mash from Collective Arts Brewery. I believe I purchased this at the LCBO here in Canada, so it's I'm quite sure it's available everywhere. Definitely, if you're into sours, but you're not quite as adventurous with the really sour or the really hoppy sours, this would be a good alternative. All right, quality, tasty. What more can you ask for? All right then. Cheers, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hey Josh, What You Drinking Live on the Connect TV. If you're watching on YouTube, please, I'm going to ask you to do those things, subscribe and the notifications, all the rest. And that just helps me get a better presence on YouTube so that I can do more things. You need more people watching you to be able to do more things on YouTube. Anyway, cheers. It's been fun. See you next time. Hey Josh, what you drinking? Connect TV. Hey Josh, what you drinking on YouTube? That be Let's just go ahead and kill him. He's been eliminated. He don't listen. Don't listen to that guy. He talks too much. Anyway, that's my show for tonight. For this week, some popcorn here. Oh, my doggy wants popcorn. Yeah, that's my show for the week, and I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the review. Jam up the mash. Very good beer from a very good brewery. Happy to support them, and I think you should too. Anyway, I'm going to say goodnight, and this is where I'd insert a tagline if I had one. All right, cheers. Have a good night.